So, moving on to the actual evidence in support of the resurrection, I think it's important first that we establish what form of evidence we're talking about, because most people think of evidence as scientific, objective, repeatable evidence, and I imagine the evidence is in a slightly different form for this kind of subject.
Sure. Well, yeah, that's a methodological question about data, and let me respond to that. It's a very important one. When we use the word empirical talks about sense data from our senses, human senses, and sense data can be arrived in different ways. Now, that's not an easy, slippery way to get non-empirical data into the question. No, all the data I'm talking about are empirical, but chemistry is not sociology. Chemistry is not anthropology. So we have distinctions that we call in universities the hard sciences and the soft sciences. And the hard sciences, physics is usually put at the top of the list. Chemistry is often number 2. And as you go down the list, it becomes a little bit softer, so that when you get toward the bottom, it's the life sciences, and it's like biology. Now, that doesn't mean biology is not a science, but it's softer because your subject, living things do things other than what you expect when they're in experiments, and not all, take the example today, not all antidotes to diseases work the same on every person. So the more you go down the list, it becomes a little softer. Then where you get into the fields where you gather research, psychology, anthropology, sociology, it becomes softer, but it's still empirical. Okay, history is a soft science. I don't even call history a science, because people think what you're thinking, and they think, oh, you think you're like the chemist. I do not, not at all. But it's a soft science. And someone might say, in what sense? And I'd say, in this sense. It's not repeatable. However, we can recheck the data, and the data is based on living, at least in the form of a document or a person or photographs. It's based on testimony that can be checked. It's what goes on in the court of law, and people wouldn't say that that's not empirical evidence. I mean, sometimes you have hard data that says a crime was committed. Other times you don't, but you have a lot of circumstantial evidence that comes in from different directions.
Right.
And one last thing, the hard scientist would be betraying a bit of a weak view, I would say, if they were to say, oh, you work in history. That's not really a science. Well, I know what they're saying, but here's the point. They can't do their hard science if there's no history. If you as a hard scientist had to redo all the Pasteur and Lister experiments down through history before you can start doing yours,
it's true.
You don't. You go to a book and you say, Lister says, Pasteur said, Newton said, and everybody says, yeah, that's either right or wrong, but they don't make you repeat the experiments. So even the hard sciences rely on history. So I'm saying history is an undeniably important soft science, and therefore it deals with empirical data.